In the discussion of NASCAR busts, Cole Whitt is one of the most interesting cases. While he ultimately left the sport in 2018 without ever finding victory lane, he proved to be a consistent, dependable driver for small Cup Series teams, and when looking back at his old Xfinity and Truck Series stats, it's pretty evident that he had potential. So what went wrong for the driver who was once the face of the Red Bull Racing Development Program, and why did he end up leaving NASCAR still at such a young age? That'll be the topic of today's video. Though he had already caught some eyes by winning go-kart championships, Cole Whitt gained his first bit of national recognition in 2008, when at just 17 years old, he became the youngest ever winner of the USAC National Midget Championship. Already the year prior, he was receiving sponsorship from Red Bull, and with his continued improvement, the Team Red Bull NASCAR team began to take notice as well. In 2009, he returned to the dirt tracks, racing in Silver Crown, sprints, and midgets in the USAC ranks, where he would rack up 17 wins, including the Copper World Classic at Phoenix International Raceway. All that was enough for Whitt to win that year's Super License Championship, a unique point system that combines points from all of the USAC divisions into one. Related to NASCAR, this would be like if drivers could earn points in Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, and have all of their points pooled into a giant overall standings. Anyway, in 2010, Red Bull wanted to give Cole a shot at stock car racing, and so they would start up a team in the K&N Pro Series East for him to run full-time in. In that 10-race season, Cole failed to win a race, but showed lots of potential nonetheless, as he won 2 pole awards and recorded 6 top 5s and 7 top 10s. 3 of those finishes were even runner-ups, so it was clear to Team Red Bull that he was at least capable of winning. Following the end of the East Series season, Whitt competed in the final Truck Series race of the year at Homestead, as well as the final 2 Nationwide Series races. In them, he performed pretty well all things considered, with lead lap top 20s in both of his nationwide races and a P28 in the truck race. So for 2011, the natural next step was for Cole to compete full-time in the Truck Series. Driving the number 60 for Turn 1 Racing, Cole didn't get off to the best start as he narrowly missed the field at Daytona, and his team had to resort to buying out Shane Sieg's number 93 entry from RSS Racing in order for him to make the show. But in the weeks to come, he improved significantly, scoring 3 straight top 10 finishes and even winning the pole at Darlington. In the 6th race at Dover, he led 23 laps late in the going, but eventually lost in a close battle with Kyle Busch to come home second. Then after finishing 3rd the week after at Charlotte, the rookie not only had proven himself to be a legitimate championship contender, but he actually took the points to lead from Matt Crafton when Crafton got caught up in a wreck. For a driver as inexperienced in stock cars as he was, this was a major achievement regardless of how much funding the team was getting from Red Bull. But unfortunately for him, this early hot streak came to a halt leaving Charlotte, as he was never in contention for any wins after that, and he was unable to finish in the top 10 quite as often. In the end, he sunk to finish 9th in points and even lost the Rookie of the Year award to Joey Coulter. Nevertheless, with 1 pole, 2 top 5s, and 11 top 10s, Cole had a better rookie season than most, not to mention that he was also a pretty clean driver, as the only 2 races he failed to finish were due to engine failures. In addition to the full truck season, he made 1 start in the Nationwide Series, where he finished 15th, and he also went on to make his Cup Series debut with Team Red Bull. Driving a 3rd number 84 car, Whitt didn't have the best results, finishing 25th at Phoenix following a spin, and 37th at Homestead after crashing out. But he would soon have much bigger problems to deal with over the off-season. That was because his primary sponsor and Cup team are both leaving NASCAR. Due to their lack of success after 5 full-time seasons with a variety of drivers, and their lack of impressions on the young adult market, Red Bull Racing would decide to end their NASCAR operations permanently. This left Cole Whitt in quite a vulnerable situation, but thanks to his impressive start to his rookie truck season, he caught the attention of Junior Motorsports and was tapped to drive the team's flagship number 88 full-time in 2012. At that time, Junior Motorsports was a good team by any metric, but they weren't the superpower they are now either. With 9 wins since their first full season in 2006, the team's success up to that point could mostly be attributed to Brad Keselowski, who had won 6 times for them between 2008 and 2009. After his departure, the results took a step back as they only scored 1 win in 2010 with Jamie McMurray, and then even went winless altogether in 2011. And in 2012, Cole Whitt was pretty much par for the course. He was a consistent top 10 driver, but he was also never in contention for any wins. To his credit, he continued to show that he was a clean driver, as he only had 3 DNFs, 2 of which were due to crashes and the other being an engine failure. In total, Whitt had 4 top 5s, 14 top 10s, and an average finish of 14.0. Those numbers were similar, though slightly worse compared to those of Eric Almirola, who drove the number 88 car the year prior. But they were certainly much better compared to Whitt's only full-time teammate Danica Patrick, who had a mere 4 top 10s. But Whitt and Patrick were both more or less proven to be in winning equipment when, after another seemingly winless season, Junior Motorsports entered a new driver in the season finale at Homestead. That was Regan Smith, and in his only start that year, he went on to win over the pole sitter Kyle Busch. So while Cole was once again unable to win a race in good equipment, he had a clean, consistent, and promising season, which all pointed to him returning to Junior Motorsports. However, that would not happen, not due to his performance, but due to a lack of sponsorship. To be honest, he was pretty fortunate to even last 1 year with a big team following his loss of support from Red Bull. But either way, from 2013 and onward, he would have to find his own sponsors and his own rides wherever he could get them. Even in 2012, most of his sponsors weren't his own, but rather those of Junior Motorsports, such as Hellman's, TaxSlayer.com, and Degree Men. And in his few Cup starts that year, he basically had no sponsorship. Cole's Cup attempts in 2012 came with both his former truck team Turn 1 Racing and Circle Sport Racing, and both of which were start and parking. Out of 9 total attempts, Cole only qualified for 5 of them, and went behind the wall early in each and every one of those races. But in his final Cup race that year at Talladega, he and the Circle Sport team were actually planning on running the full distance. That wasn't until he received a bad push from Casey Mears and got turned hard into the outside wall. While it was no doubt a huge shot to the small team to be out of the race in just lap 17 with a totaled race car, Cole had done just about as much as he possibly could have for those 17 laps prior to crashing out, as at the time of the crash, he had made his way up to 12th place from his 42nd place starting spot. Nevertheless, with his lack of funding going into 2013, none of the potential he had shown thus far would be able to land him a full-time ride. In fact, it took him until the 11th round at Dover to secure a single deal. That part-time deal with TriStar Motorsports came at the expense of the rookie Hal Martin, who had similarly run out of funding 10 races into a planned full-time season. Taking over the team's number 44 car for 14 races and the number 10 car for an additional race, Cole Whitt put together some truly impressive races, especially the road courses. At both the Road America and Watkins Glen, he came home in 8th place, finishing ahead of multiple big teams each time. He went on to score 2 more top 10s that year, one in the Fall Kentucky race and one in the season finale at Homestead, which for a team like TriStar Motorsports that was still fielding 1 or 2 start and park cars every race to allow him to go the full distance, that was a major achievement. In addition to those nationwide series races, Cole was also able to string together a deal with Swan Racing in the Cup Series to drive their number 30 car towards the end of the season. However, Cole was unable to work the same magic in those races as in 7 starts with them. He was only able to finish a best of 27th place at Dover. But still, seeing what he was able to do for an underfunded team like TriStar Motorsports in the Nationwide Series, Swan Racing decided to bring him back for 2014, and this time for the full season. So for better or for worse, come 2014, Cole Whitt was now officially a Cup Series driver and would run for Rookie of the Year among the likes of Kyle Larson, Austin Dillon, and a handful of other small team drivers. The first 8 races for Whitt went pretty poorly, but just about as expected, with a late race crash in the Daytona 500 and an average finish of 30.9. His best result by far out of those races was 18th place run at Auto Club. There, in a race plagued with tire failures but that only saw 2 DNFs, Whitt managed to bring it home on the lead lap and ahead of multiple series winners and champions. And looking at the finishing order, the only other small team driver who finished ahead of him was Germain Racing's Casey Mears, who crossed the line in 15th. But heading into the 9th round at Richmond, Whitt would no longer be competing for Swan Racing, and his car would be listed under BK Racing's ownership. That was because Swan Racing had officially gone under. Due to a lack of sponsorship amidst their first season as a 2-car team, the Swan Racing owners were forced to sell off their flagship number 30 team, but luckily for Whitt, one of Swan's co-owners, Anthony Marlowe, was able to successfully merge the number 26 team with BK Racing to keep it afloat for the rest of the season. But from a performance standpoint, the assistance from BK Racing was negligible, and Whitt only managed to score 2 more top 20 finishes. Those came back-to-back in the fall of that year, with a P15 at Talladega and a very impressive P18 in Martinsville. At the end of his first full Cup season, Cole wound up 31st in points, which all things considered wasn't that bad. For reference, there were 36 full-time drivers that season, and Cole fared better than much of his direct competition. Throughout the start of the season, he'd been performing much better than his Swan Racing teammate Parker Kligerman, and after his move to BK Racing, he had also outdone his fellow rookies and teammates there of Alex Bowman and Ryan Truex. And perhaps most telling was that in the final Rookie of the Year standings, he came in 4th place out of 8, only behind Kyle Larson, Austin Dillon, and Justin Allgaier, with Allgaier being the only one that he ever had a realistic shot of beating. For 2015, Whitt's consistency was rewarded with what seemed to be an upgrade in teams, as he was signed by Front Row Motorsports to drive the number 35 car. But this deal with Front Row didn't come at the expense of replacing one of their other drivers, but was rather an expansion of their already underfunded team from 2 to 3 full-time cars. Needless to say, the team didn't progress much in 2015. They stayed stagnant at their best, and their overall stats took a step backwards. Worst of all, for the first time since 2010, the entire 3-car organization failed to score a single top 10 finish all season long. But compared to David Gilliland, the full-time driver of the 38, and Brett Moffitt, the primary driver of the 34, Cole Whitt was the best driver on the team statistically speaking. With an average finish of 28.7 and a best finish of 13th in the Geico 500 at Talladega, Whitt came in 31st in the final standings, matching his finish from the year before, and just narrowly edging out his veteran teammate of Gilliland. So while he was once again very consistent and not at all underperforming for his level of equipment, his season lacked any major highlights or races to be remembered for. With Gilliland retiring from full-time racing at the end of that season, I think Front Row Motorsports could have greatly benefited from bringing back Cole Whitt as his long-term replacement. But as it turned out, the team completely restructured themselves for the 2016 season, bringing in the prior year's Xfinity Series champ Chris Buescher to drive the number 34, and journeyman driver Landon Castle to take over the 38. And gone was the 35 car, or at least its full-time status, leaving Cole Whitt in search of a new ride over the off-season. He found it this time in Premium Motorsports, where he was signed to drive the number 98 machine. Attempting to go the full season as an open car, the 98 team got off to a rough start that year, as well running 10th in their dual race with just under 20 laps to go. Cole got loose while trying to get a run in the car ahead of him and went spinning around. Just narrowly avoiding being clobbered by Brian Scott, it looked like Whitt would be able to reset and have another shot on the restart. However, at some point during his spin, his transmission completely gave out and took him out of the race. But to his credit, his aggression in that moment was well warranted, because the car he was trying so desperately to get around was the fellow non-chartered entry of Michael McDowell. As the 21 of Ryan Blaney had already punched his ticket into the main field via qualifying, there was only one spot remaining in the 500 between each of the other 3 non-chartered teams in that duel, and it would come down to whichever of them finished best. So despite his best efforts, Whitt was forced to sit out the Daytona 500, and instead start his season the next week at Atlanta. The races that followed didn't produce many good results either, with an 18th place finish in the Geico 500 being Whitt's best finish by far, as this season was quickly approaching the halfway point. And even in that race, there was room for disappointment, as he was situated just inside the top 10 on the final lap, before making an ill-timed block on Landon Castle and creating a multi-car crash. But in the next superspeedway race, the Coke 0400 at Daytona, Whitt found himself in the same position at the end of the race, but this time thought more smartly than to bite off more than he could chew, and stayed in line to score both his team's and his own personal best finish of 11th place. After another solid race the week after with a P21 at Kentucky, the rest of Whitt's season went back to how it started, with finishes averaging from the high 20s to mid-30s. That wasn't until the 31st round at Kansas, which would be his final race for the team, as he had run 2 dry and funding to finish out the year. So in 29 total race attempts that year, Cole failed to qualify for the Daytona 500 as well as both Richmond races, and only scored 2 top 20 finishes. But given that Premium Motorsports was known exclusively as a backmarker team, it would be ridiculous to say that Cole didn't perform well for them, because not only did he give them their best finish up to that point, but he didn't crash out of a single race. Rather, all 5 of his DNFs were due to mechanical failures. While he wasn't racing in the Cup Series at the end of that year, Cole did make a few appearances in the Truck and Xfinity Series. In trucks, he made a one-off start for Ricky Benton Enterprises at Martinsville, where he finished in impressive 12th place. And in the Xfinity Series, he rejoined TriStar Motorsports for the final 2 races of the season. At Phoenix, he also stayed out of trouble and gave the team a solid 16th place finish, but in the finale at Homestead, both he and the team got in way over their heads and created a season highlight for themselves in all the wrong ways. After running around the top 15 for most of the day, the caution came out with 10 to go in the championship deciding race due to a single car spin. At a tire-dependent track like Homestead, all of the leaders were forced to come down pit road under caution to have any shot at the win. But in an effort to simply finish better than where they were before, Cole Whitt's team opted to stay out on track. And on the ensuing restart with 3 laps to decide the next champion, Whitt spun his tires with the championship 4 drivers of Eric Jones and Justin Allgaier trapped directly behind him. Without a doubt, this poorly thought-out strategy call cost both Jones and Allgaier a shot at the title, and worse yet, Whitt plummeted through the order to finish in 18th, the last car in the lead lap. Nevertheless, TriStar Motorsports was impressed with his performance in those 2 races, and with his strong runs for them back in 2013, they decided to hire him on as their full-time Cup driver for the 2017 season. In the team's return to the Cup Series for the first time since 2013, TriStar is now fully under the ownership of Mark Smith and would no longer be start and parking any of their races. The team faced no troubles qualifying for the Daytona 500 thanks to a lease charter from BK Racing, and in fact they were credited with leading 3 laps thanks to a bit of pit strategy. Over the course of the final 47-lap green flag run to the finish, Whitt drifted back to 15th place with 2 laps to go, but he would unfortunately run out of fuel and coast to the line in 18th. Still, it was a solid start to the year for the new Cup team, and followed up by a P20 the next week at Atlanta, it looked like they could be on track for a surprisingly successful season. Leaving the 11th round at Kansas, Whitt had improved the team's best finish to a P16, which he claimed in the Geico 500 the week prior, and was seated 29th in points out of the 37 drivers who could have been considered full-time at that point in the season. But once summer came around, the TriStar Motorsports team began falling apart, quite literally. Beginning at the Coca-Cola 600, they would fail to finish 6 of the next 8 races, crashing out of the AAA 400 at Dover and suffering engine failures in the other 5. After that miserable stretch, Whitt was able to up the team's best finish to 12th in the Brickyard 400. But from that race onwards, they were unable to score even another lead lap finish for the rest of the season, and wound up 33rd in points, the last of all the drivers who attempted every race. So despite scoring 4 top 20 finishes and displaying good consistency as far as his driving went, in the end, 4 crash-related DNFs coupled with 5 engine failures derailed his promising start and dropped his average finish from a 24.8 in the first 11 races to an overall average finish of 28.3. Over that off-season, Cole came to the realization that his racing career was only going to continue on this path. That is, endlessly chasing sponsors and trying to make the most out of old and underfunded equipment. An endless cycle that he was no longer satisfied with at that point in his life. So in an effort to spend more time with his family, Cole volunteered to step back into a part-time role for 2018, and so TriStar signed the former BK Racing rookie Corey LaJoie to fill in for the remaining races. But within TriStar Motorsports, there were much bigger problems than a change in the driver lineup, as in July of 2017, the team's founder and longtime owner Mark Smith tragically lost his battle with cancer, leaving his son Brian as the new owner. In his father's honor, Brian continued the team's operations throughout the rest of the year, and was set on running the number 72 car full-time again in 2018. In 2018, the results were nearly identical to those the year prior, as while Cole Whitt improved his average finish to a 26.8 across his 13 starts, LaJoie ended the year with an average finish of 31.5 across his 23 starts. However, most of his misfortune can be attributed to his numerous mechanical failures. Though Whitt only went behind the wall once due to a crash at Sonoma, LaJoie suffered 7 DNFs, and only 2 of which were of his own making, as he suffered 4 engine failures in addition to electrical problems in the Bristol night race. So in summary, the team didn't take any strides forward in 2018, and following their Xfinity program that closed its doors after the 2017 season, TriStar Motorsports shut down entirely at the end of 2018. And since his 25th place run in that year's penultimate race at Phoenix, Cole Whitt has since permanently retired from NASCAR, all by the age of 27. And now it is time to answer, was he really that bad? Cole Whitt strikes me as the type of driver who would have excelled in the lower series, but who was just not quite of Cup Series caliber. Though he never won a single race in either the Trucks or Xfinity Series, he was a consistent top 10 driver in his rookie years when he was driving for good teams. And I believe he absolutely would have won multiple races had he stuck around with Junior Motorsports and Xfinity, and had not been rushed up to the Cup Series to race for severely underfunded teams. On top of that, he was set for failure from the get-go by the closing of Red Bull Racing, as after all, he was fully sponsored by them from his championship-winning USAC days through his rookie truck season and Cup debut. And speaking of the USAC, Cole had no stock car racing experience before he started competing in NASCAR. He just went straight from dirt midget and sprint car racing to just one season in each of the ARCA truck and Xfinity ranks before being expected to hold his own for small teams in the Cup Series. And from that perspective, he did a lot better than most would have. The fact that he made it as far as he did is a testament to his overall talent and determination to make a career for himself in racing. So overall, I have to say Cole Whitt was a heavily underrated driver who turned out to be a great asset for small teams in any series, who wanted a driver that would get the most out of their equipment and not tear up their cars. But that is all for today's video. If you did enjoy this one, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like these. As long as you guys are continuing to enjoy this series, I have plenty of more ideas for future episodes with a very long list of drivers to come. I don't have a lot of channel announcements this time around, so I'm just going to continue to try uploading around once per week as long as I can before school starts picking up here, and then at that point probably expect uploads only around once every 2 weeks. But I can promise you it will not ever get worse than that. Thanks again for all the recent support. My last video didn't do all that well, but I was just experimenting with something new on that one, so needless to say, I'll probably stray away from that style of content from now on. But yeah, that's all I've got to say for today. So until next time, peace out.